The entire courtroom froze. Cameras stopped clicking. Even the air felt heavy. Because when Judge Alicia Warren, the first black female federal judge in the district, walked in, every single person in that courtroom rose to their feet. Except one. Billionaire real estate tycoon Grant Kessington leaned back in his chair like he owned the place, legs stretched out, eyes locked on the judge, with a smirk that sent shockwaves around the room. This wasn't just disrespect, it was defiance from a man already facing charges for destroying the lives of thousands of families. Whispers erupted. Deputies tensed. His own lawyer begged him to stand. But Grant didn't move. Instead, he said 7 words that turned the courtroom into a battlefield. "I don't stand for people above me." Everyone thought the judge would explode, but she didn't. Instead, she calmly set into motion one of the most shocking, unexpected, and powerful lessons a billionaire had ever faced. A lesson that would break him, change him, and leave the entire country stunned. This is the story of the arrogant billionaire who refused to stand, and the judge who changed everything. How dare he? The words spread through the courtroom like sparks, carried from one shocked spectator to another. Even the clicking cameras seemed to pause, almost as if they too were trying to process the audacity unfolding before them. Billionaire real estate mogul Grant Kessington, a man whose name appeared regularly in business magazines and corruption rumors, sat slouched in his chair like he owned the place, legs stretched out arrogantly, chin tilted upward, fingers tapping his $1,000 watch. Grant didn't rise when federal Judge Alicia Warren entered. Judge Warren wasn't just any judge. She was the first black female federal judge in the district, a woman who had earned her position through discipline, brilliance, and years of fighting to bring justice to communities ignored by powerful men like Grant. And now here he was, openly refusing to follow the most basic rule of courtroom respect. The room felt like the air itself was tightening. Lawyers, journalists, victims waiting for justice. Everyone froze. A deputy's hand twitched near his belt. Grant's attorney whispered frantically for him to stand, but Grant waved him off with a careless flick of his wrist. Judge Warren paused at the bench, watching him with an unreadable expression. She tapped her gavel once, a soft but commanding sound that cut through the tension. "Mr. Kessington," she said evenly, "in my courtroom, everyone stands." Grant just smirked slowly, deliberately. Not a smirk of amusement, but one of confidence. One that said, "I am untouchable." The whispering intensified. A man in the back row muttered, "He's going to regret that." A woman beside him shook her head, stunned at the blatant disrespect. Grant leaned forward, arrogance dripping from every word. "I don't stand for people who think they're above me." Every jaw dropped. Cameras flashed. Even those who disliked Grant didn't expect that level of defiance. Judge Warren didn't raise her voice. She didn't show anger. Her calmness was almost eerie, like the moment before a massive storm hits. She simply lifted her eyes and met Grant's with quiet authority. Everyone in that room knew instantly. This wasn't going to be a normal hearing. This was going to be a battle, one that Grant believed he had already won. But he was wrong. So very wrong. Grant's attorney was practically sweating through his suit as he leaned toward his client, whispering urgently, "Just stand, please." But Grant's pride was louder than any sense of self-preservation. He pushed the attorney away with a slight shove, keeping his cold stare locked on Judge Warren. The billionaire had ruled boardrooms and bulldozed communities with nothing but a signature. He had bought judges, silenced investigations, and intimidated city officials. Grant believed he was the biggest force in any room he walked into. Why should this courtroom, this small place, as he called it, be any different? Judge Warren studied him like a psychologist analyzing a troubled patient. Her voice remained steady. "Mr. Kessington, respect for the court is not optional." Grant scoffed loudly, ensuring every reporter heard. "Respect? Don't make me laugh. I don't bow to titles." Gasps rolled across the room. Even the court reporter's fingers froze above the keyboard. Judge Warren tilted her head slightly. "You're used to being the biggest name in the room. But today," she paused long enough for every heartbeat to swell, "today you're just a defendant." Grant's jaw tightened. For the first time, a flicker of irritation broke through his practiced superiority. You think you can talk to me like I'm beneath you? He snapped. You are beneath the law, she replied calmly. We all are. The tension became so thick it felt like a physical wall. A deputy took a step forward, anticipating a contempt order, but Judge Warren lifted a hand, an unmistakable signal. She had plans, but none of them involved losing her cool. Everyone, we will take a short recess, she announced suddenly. Grant smirked triumphantly, assuming she needed the break to gather herself. He leaned back again, tapping his polished loafers against the courtroom floor. But Judge Warren had not retreated. She had not lost control. She had simply decided it was time to teach a lesson, one no amount of money could shield him from. What she would do next would leave reporters speechless, lawyers stunned, and even Grant himself questioning the very foundation of his arrogance. During the recess, Grant was escorted, not to a holding cell, not to a waiting area, but to a secluded room beside the courtroom. The billionaire's eyebrows furrowed as he stepped inside. The walls were covered in photos and documents. Not luxurious decor, not abstract art. These were victims, real families affected by Grant's empire. Images of evicted tenants, shuttered apartment buildings, elderly residents stranded on sidewalks with their belongings piled beside them. Letters written by people whose lives had collapsed because of fraudulent fees, sudden rent hikes, and dangerous living conditions. Grant turned to the bailiff. What is this? Some kind of stunt. Before the bailiff could answer, Judge Warren entered the room. Her presence instantly shifted the energy. This, she said firmly, is who your arrogance hurts. Grant stiffened. I don't know these people. That, she replied, is exactly why we're here. She walked him through the room, like a teacher guiding a stubborn student. She pointed to the photo of a single mother, her tired eyes filled with fear. She stood outside your condemned building for hours, begging your company not to evict her children. Grant swallowed. Another picture. An elderly couple sitting outside a boarded-up apartment. They put their entire retirement into rent payments. Your company raised the rent illegally. Grant shifted his weight, discomfort finally cracking through. Then Judge Warren delivered a ruling, not legal, but moral. Before this trial continues, she said, you will spend 5 hours listening to live testimonies from victims, 1 hour for each housing district your company's exploited. Grant's jaw dropped. You can't make me do that. In this courtroom, she said softly, I can. The next hours were scheduled. Victims were brought in one by one. Their stories were real, raw, devastating, and Grant would be forced to face them, not from behind paperwork or lawyers, but face to face. This is not a punishment, Judge Warren said before leaving the room. This is an education. Grant looked around the room again, and for the first time all day, the billionaire didn't have a single word to say. The first hour of testimonies began with a veteran in a faded uniform jacket. His voice trembled, not out of fear, but exhaustion. Your company raised my rent by 80% overnight, he said. I slept in my car for 6 months. Grant folded his arms, trying to keep his composure. But something in the man's eyes, disappointment, maybe, made him look away. Next, an elderly woman shuffled in. She clutched a framed photo of her late husband. He couldn't handle the stress of being pushed out of our home, she whispered. He died a week after we were evicted. Grant blinked hard, the weight of her words hitting deeper than he expected. Then came a teenage girl, no older than 16. She held her backpack like a shield. We moved 7 times because of your company, she said quietly. I used to get straight A's. Now I'm failing half my classes. Grant's throat tightened. One testimony after another poured into the room, stories full of pain, confusion, and betrayal. People who had lived regular lives until Grant's corporate greed pushed them over the edge. You did this, one man finally said. Maybe not with your own hands, but with your choices. Grant opened his mouth, searching for a defense, an excuse, a denial, but nothing came out. For the first time in his life, he wasn't fighting a competitor or a lawsuit. He was facing human beings. Hour 2 passed, then 3, then 4. By hour 5, Grant no longer sat with crossed arms. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, listening as if the stories were anchors pulling him back to reality. The shield of arrogance had shattered, piece by piece, until what remained was someone he didn't even recognize. When the recess ended, he walked back into the courtroom silently. Not a word, not a smile. And when Judge Warren entered, Grant, without hesitation, stood. Not because he was told to, not because cameras were on him, but because he finally understood the gravity of the moment. He didn't only stand. He bowed his head. When the courtroom settled, Judge Warren prepared to resume proceedings. But Grant unexpectedly rose again. "Your Honor, may I speak?" Gasps filled the room. He never voluntarily spoke, unless it benefited him. But this time his voice wasn't smooth or polished. It cracked around the edges. "I disrespected this courtroom," he began. "And I disrespected you. I thought money made me powerful. But today I met people more powerful than I've ever been." The room was silent. "I listened to stories I should have known," he continued. "Stories my greed created. And I can't apologize enough for what I've done." Judge Warren studied him carefully. "Being humbled," she said, "is temporary. Being changed is permanent. Which one applies to you depends on what you do next." Everyone leaned forward. And then something no one in the courtroom, maybe not even Grant, expected happened. "I will compensate every victim," Grant announced. "Every family, every individual, every veteran, every child, whatever it costs." Reporters scrambled for their phones. Lawyers stared. Even his own attorney froze. "I'll also fund new community housing programs," Grant added, voice steady now. "And I'll support legislation to prevent predatory landlords from doing what I did." Judge Warren nodded slowly. "Words are easy, Mr. Kessington. Action takes courage." "I understand," he said, "and I'll prove it." Finally, she delivered the official verdict. Grant would still face legal consequences, fines, probation, community service, but she also approved his voluntary proposals, ensuring they became legally binding commitments. As deputies escorted him out, a reporter shouted, "Mr. Kessington, why did you stand today?" Grant paused at the doorway. "Because," he said softly, "for the first time, I understood who I was standing for." Judge Warren passed through the reporters calmly, her voice carrying the final message of the day. Justice isn't only about punishment. It's about transformation. And that transformation began the moment a man who once refused to stand finally chose to. If you found this story powerful, inspiring, or even unbelievable, make sure to hit that like button. It tells YouTube this story mattered. Don't forget to subscribe for more dramatic, emotional, and real-life inspired stories, just like this one. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Judge Warren? Your engagement helps this story reach even more people. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.